I bet you didn't know what happened in room 303. It was 1998. I was a traveling salesman, used to long drives and cheap motels. That night, I was exhausted, just needed a place to sleep. The motel I found was one of those places that looked like it had been forgotten by time. The neon sign flickered. The parking lot was almost empty. Inside, a cute desk clerk handed me my key. She looked out of place, but before I turned away, she said something strange. "Stay away from room 303. I laughed. "Why?" She didn't smile back. "Just don't go near it." I chalked it up to small town superstition. Maybe an inside joke. Either way, I was too tired to care. I made my way down the dimly lit hallway. The air smelled damp, like old wood and mildew. And then, I walked past it, room 303. The air around it felt different, cold. The smell was worse here, something rotten, something decayed. I hurried past and shut myself in my room. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I wasn't alone in that hallway. I got ready for bed, trying to ignore the unease creeping up my spine. But then, knocking, soft, deliberate, coming from the wall. I froze. It was coming from room 303. I held my breath, waiting. Knock, 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 slow, rhythmic, too steady to be random. I grabbed the motel phone and dialed the front desk. "Hey, I think someone's in room 303. Silence. Then the clerk's voice, low, uneasy. "That room is empty." I hung up. My hands were shaking. But then, one last knock. And this time, it was right behind my head. I don't know how, but I managed to fall asleep until 3 a.m. Something woke me. At first I wasn't sure why. Then I heard it. The doorknob, rattling. Not just once. Someone was twisting it, testing it. I sat up, my heart slamming in my chest. I saw it then. A shadow. At my window. Someone was standing outside my room. My breath caught in my throat. I waited, hoping they'd go away. But the rattling got harder, more frantic. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the lamp from my nightstand, crept to the door, and yanked it open. No one was there. The hallway was empty. But down the hall, room 303's door was open, just a crack. Inside, nothing but darkness. I slammed my door shut and locked it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At sunrise, I grabbed my bag and went straight to the front desk. The clerk barely looked at me. She already knew. I asked, "What the hell is in room 303? She sighed. "No one has stayed in that room for years." I felt sick. Then who was knocking? Who was standing outside my door? She hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "A man died in that room. Years ago, he checked in, but he never checked out." I didn't ask for details. I just left. But before I walked out the door, the clerk called after me. "You're not the first person to see him." Years later, I looked up the motel. It burned down in 2004. Most of it was completely destroyed. But when the firemen went through the wreckage, they found one thing untouched. Room 303. The walls were still standing, the doors still locked. As if the fire refused to enter. They tore the building down after that. But sometimes I wonder, if someone built another motel on that land, would room 303 still be there, waiting? Some things don't want to be forgotten. Some people check in and never check out. If you made it to the end, tell me, would you have opened the door? Like, share. And if you ever stay in a motel, don't forget to check the room next door. The Phantom Maid. A young couple, Jake and Melissa, were on a road trip when they decided to stop at a small desert motel. It was eerily quiet, the kind of place that felt forgotten by time. They got a room for the night, and as they unpacked, there was a soft knock on the door. The couple exchanged puzzled glances, wondering who it could be at this late hour. The room was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the walls. A woman stood outside in an old-fashioned maid's uniform. Her attire seemed out of place, like she had stepped out of a different era. The couple hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to open the door. She didn't speak, just smiled and nodded, before pushing past them and straightening the bed, even though it wasn't messy. Her movements were swift and precise, almost mechanical. The couple watched in stunned silence, feeling a chill in the air. The maid's presence was unsettling, yet they couldn't bring themselves to stop her. She finished her task quickly, gave them one last enigmatic smile, and left the room as quietly as she had entered. The couple stood there, trying to make sense of what had just happened, feeling an inexplicable sense of unease. The next day, before Jake or Melissa could say anything, she walked into the bathroom. It was just an ordinary evening, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The bathroom door closed behind her with a soft click, and then she never came out. Melissa got up, confused. She checked the bathroom. The seconds felt like hours as she knocked on the door, calling out her name. No response. Panic started to set in. Empty, no windows, no second door. The woman was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Melissa's heart raced as she frantically searched every corner. How could someone disappear from a locked room? The mystery deepened. They reported it to the front desk, but the clerk just gave them a blank stare. "We don't have a maid working tonight." Later, they found out the motel had been abandoned for years before reopening under new management. The eerie silence that surrounded the place was a testament to its dark past. The previous owners, a husband and wife, who had dreams of turning the motel into a bustling roadside attraction. But those dreams were shattered when they were both found dead in the maid's quarters in 1963. The circumstances of their deaths were shrouded in mystery, with rumors of foul play and whispers of a curse that lingered in the air. The new management had no idea what they were stepping into, and the chilling history of the motel continued to haunt its halls. The Florida sun beat down on my rented Ford Fiesta. It was July 2015. The air hung thick and heavy. I was driving down Route 1, desperate to find a place to rest for the night. The cheap motels lining the highway seemed to shimmer in the heat. Each one looked more dilapidated than the last. Exhaustion finally won. I pulled into the parking lot of the Blue Swallow Motel. It wasn't exactly inviting, but it was a roof over my head. The motel clerk, a nice-looking woman with a warm smile, handed me a key. Room 12. She met my gaze with friendly eyes. My room was at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and bleach. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was small and dingy. A double bed took up most of the space. There was a rickety dresser and a chair. A single dusty window looked out onto the parking lot. My gaze fell on the mirror above the dresser. It was an old thing, the glass cloudy and scratched. Something about it felt off. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I tried to shake off the feeling. It was just an old mirror in a cheap motel. What was there to be afraid of? I forced myself to unpack my bag and hang up a few clothes. The last thing I wanted was to spend any more time in this room than I had to, but I was exhausted from the drive. I knew I needed at least a few hours of sleep before I could continue on my journey. I crawled into bed and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The mirror seemed to loom larger in the darkness. I could have sworn I saw a figure lurking in its depths. It was just my imagination playing tricks on me. I took a deep breath and tried to relax. Soon I drifted off to a restless, uneasy sleep. I dreamt I was back in the motel room. The air was thick and heavy, suffocating me. I tried to move, to speak, but I was paralyzed. My eyes were fixed on the mirror. There was a figure standing behind me, It was tall and skeletal, its features hidden in the shadows. It reached out a long, bony finger and traced a line down the glass. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The figure leaned in close, its face inches from my own. I could feel its cold, rotten breath on my skin, and then I woke up. I was drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was still dark, but the first rays of dawn were beginning to peek through the cracks in the curtains. I sat up in bed trying to catch my breath. It was just a nightmare. That's all it was. But as I looked around the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy. I glanced at the mirror. My blood ran cold. There, on the dusty surface of the glass, was a handprint. It was a faint impression, barely visible in the dim light, but it was there. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the mirror. I ran my fingers over the glass, tracing the outline of the handprint. It was cold to the touch. I shivered. How was this possible? I was alone in the room. I had been alone all night. The windows were locked, the door bolted shut. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. Panic welled up inside me. I had to get out of there. I grabbed my things and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I raced down the hallway to the motel office, my heart pounding in my ears. The motel clerks were standing behind the counter. They looked up as I rushed to the counter, their eyes widening in surprise. "What's wrong, ma'am?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. "There's something in my room," I stammered, trying to catch my breath. "A handprint on the mirror." The man frowned. "You must be mistaken, ma'am. This is a family-run business. We haven't had any other guests in weeks." "But I saw it," I insisted. "It was there on the mirror. I swear it." The man's expression softened. He leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. "There's something you should know about room 12, he began. He hesitated, then continued. "Years ago, a young woman was murdered in that room. Her husband, they say, in a fit of jealous rage. He strangled her right in front of that mirror. My blood ran cold. The mirror," I whispered. The man nodded grimly. "They say her last breath, final tear, fogged up the mirror, left a handprint. They cleaned it, of course, but some stains, some memories, they linger." I could barely speak. I felt sick to my stomach. The handprint, the nightmare, it all made sense now. "Get out," the man said, his voice low and urgent. "Get out now, while you still can." I didn't need to be told twice. I hurried and checked out, grabbed my keys, and ran out of the motel. I didn't look back. I just drove, putting as much distance between me and that cursed place as I could. I never went back to the Seabreeze Motel. I heard a few years later that it had been torn down, condemned by the county. But the story didn't end there. Locals say that sometimes, late at night, when the moon is full, you can still see her. They say that if you stand on the rubble of the old motel, in the spot where room 12 used to be, you can see it. A figure in the moonlight, a shadowy reflection in an invisible mirror, a hand reaching out, desperate to be free.